the complete silencing of anyone not going with the agenda. It doesn't really matter what their political affiliation is, what their beliefs may be, but anyone showing that they're not willing to compromise and they can't be bought off will be silenced. And this is happening all across the board. In August of 2020, Del Bigtree, his Highwire program, was silenced. It was taken off of YouTube. That was a real threat to the pharmaceutical establishment because it gave an educated and polished look to what previously could be dismissed as mere anti-vaxxer, ignorant sentiment. Here was an insider speaking educatedly on a subject that they count on people to be just good little sheep listening to authoritative figures who don't know anything about their own systems or how they operate. And this guy was taking you through and showing you the documentation and the videos of every step of the process of how all these pills and vaccines get passed and put into the regimen. A real threat to what they got planned. There's several other YouTubers who have been taken off the air. And now this morning, the local early morning guy on the radio, on conservative talk radio, a lot of people have been upset about the way that Fox News has handled the election, and rightfully so. Anybody that's followed my channel knows that I don't look at Trump as an alternative. He's part of the agenda. To me, it's undisputable. The evidence is right there. He's pushing the vaccine. His administration has renewed the emergency declaration, enabling and empowering FEMA to have the legal authority in this land. FEMA, of course, is going to come alongside the Department of Health and Human Services and administering the vaccine and dealing with any resistance to it. But the local guy, who's a big Trump supporter, he believes Trump is the alternative to the globalists. And maybe a lot of people don't realize this, but I can give people a lot of grace. I mean, I'm not looking for anybody to be lockstep with me. I just say what I believe. And if people don't like it or take issue with it, hey, I'm open to a discussion. If you got points you want to make and show me I'm wrong, show me where I'm not seeing the whole picture, I'd gladly listen to you. You know, I'm not going to listen to people that are just like, oh, you're wrong, or you know, want to cast aspersions on you. But I can get along with people who stand for God and who want to fight the evil in this world, even if I think some of the modes or methods or things that they're following are misguided. So that's why I bring certain things up is, hey, you know, we can better focus our energies in different ways than to be playing a part in the conflict that they want us to be enamored with.
Everything has a rhythm. Man, it makes the system so out of rhythm, it has to be reset. But God already reset it when He sent His Son. You can't get back to the garden by climbing the fence like a thief. It's a coward. A thief is a coward. But God's good. He's merciful. He's gracious. Slow to anger. Plenteous in mercy. He doesn't reward us according to our faults, but according to us as His children. That's a comforting thought.
You know, I never got into politics on this channel. When I came into Christ in 2010, I came out of politics. I came out of scouring the social economic theory and the writings of great social political writers, and I came to the realization that there was no answer. Man's nature precluded any possibility of a truly just society. And I was done with politics, and that lasted for quite a while, until it came apparent that the so-called church did nothing in the spirit. It was all politics. And they wanted to play games in a field they knew nothing about. And so that's my field. If you want to play politics, church, let's play politics for real. That's where I started to divulge into some of the deeper elements of the world around us that may look like a political nature, but inherently there's nothing really political about them. It's a spiritual entity driving a governmental and economic policy that's going to create a one world empire of total control. That's what the devil wants. And so that's really why I ever got into any of the stuff that I get into. You know, that's not just strictly reading the Bible or apologetics or those sorts of things. Because people in the church are, they're being used by evil people who are laughing at them, laughing them to scorn because of their naivete to the agendas. After they use them, they discard them and then they laugh at them. And they're good people, and I can't stand to see God's people being scoffed and laughed at. And so I try, and God says my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So I've tried to put some information out there to help people. But at the end of the day, that's not where my focus is. But there does need to be people calling out the agenda. And so this morning, I tuned in because I've been driving in the early mornings. And so, my mind's always active. Turn on the radio, listening to some of these guys. And the morning guy, he's been going after them over the election fraud. And there is undisputable evidence to me. I mean, any time you see, it's just mathematics. Anytime you see that many anomalies, one of those anomalies beggars all mathematical probability. If you add all the anomalies together, you have something that is beyond possibility. Mathematically, it's impossible. And so you can say it's conspiracy theory if you want, but the reality is you have been given by God pattern recognition as a basic subset in intelligence. And you are to use pattern recognition in order to understand your world. We all do it. It's just that liars, connivers, and frauds, they want to jam all that stuff up and make you doubt what is plainly obvious so that they can get away with what they're getting away with. It's an abusive relationship. So if you see at 3:42 a.m. votes jump 142,000 for one candidate and 0 for the other, there is a statistical impossibility there. And if you see that over and over, state by state, in all these pivotal states, then there's reason for investigation. Okay? Now, you're never going to be able to prove anything because it's all done through the digital voting machine and the software. And so without a complete auditing and a revelation of how these machines work and how these anomalies can be achieved, you'll never catch it. No matter how many recounts you do, it's all futile. So if they never get down to the voting machine itself, you'll know that they didn't want to catch it. So all this talk about recounts and this and that, it's nonsense. You're talking about stuff that you're not going to be able to catch with a recount. It's votes being flipped, votes being added, that you have no paper trail, no physical evidence of. The only way you can prove anything is by showing and demonstrating how the software inside the machine works and how it can be accessed and reprogrammed itself. And then you have to make this inferred case to the data and the statistical impossibility of it. You see, so this sort of thing is next to impossible to make a case in court with. That's why tyrants love it. That's why they use it. If they want to deny it, they can deny it. If they want it to stand, it'll stand. So you'll know how this thing works out, what direction they want it to go. We know ultimately it doesn't really matter who the president is for this agenda to go through, but it does. It does insofar as to what it means to the man on the street who believes in it. So you use one candidate or the other depending on what your game plan coming up is going to be. I thought it was going to be Trump simply because Trump seemed to me to to be the way in which you get the most widespread acceptance of the vaccine while also instigating the most widespread social unrest. Because you don't get unrest, particularly in the cities, from Trump supporters, people about law and order. You get it from lawless people who want to overthrow the system. So if you make it look like Trump stole the election, then you can incite widespread violence in the cities. If you make it look like Biden stole the election, you're going to have a lot of people upset, but the way they're going to manifest their displeasure is there's going to be a lot more resistance to the Great Reset side of things, the vaccine and all that. So that's why I thought it was going to be Trump. And if it does end up being Trump, that's probably why. But if it's Biden, then they're going a different route. That route could very well be just a revelation of who's really not going along with the program, who really needs to be eliminated, who really needs to be locked up and removed from society and so forth and so on. Maybe that is the agenda they go with then, because it's not going to be easy to resist this thing coming up, and there's going to be a million good reasons why people will just go with the program, accept the vaccine, all that. But for the person with true moral conviction, they're going to stand no matter what. And so they'll be revealed just by the process of everyone else laying down, bowing before the image of the beast, essentially. So that could very well be where they're going with this. Just revelation of who the real troublemakers are. And it's very convenient because now you can get society to do your dirty work for you. You can get society to remove these elements for you. You don't have to get your hands dirty. You've got everybody ready and willing to take out people that are putting them in danger, they think, because of your PSYOP. The complete success of your PSYOP has so many people just frothing at the mouth. They see you without a mask on, for instance, and their mind starts to implode. It's really a beautiful thing if it wasn't so horrific. You know, they talk about this as undermining our election process. Well, your election process has been a fraud for over 100 years now. They've controlled both sides of the two people that you get to vote for. And it's been at least 20 years since it's been further infraudulated by the electronic voting machines. To have an electronic voting machine and not have paper physical ballots, and only paper physical ballots, means you have no security over your elections. You cannot ensure any elections are valid. That's just facts. As long as people accept the electronic voting machine, they can forget about any real democracy. You're just a banana republic waiting to happen. That's just a fact. If you went back in time to 2004, to that election where it was stolen, and now it was stolen for the GOP candidate at that time, so a lot of the same people crying fraud today weren't too worried about it back then. But if you look at the machine in those days, it was Diebold. Now Diebold, after 2004, it's kind of like Monsanto. The name became so tarnished by its evil that it had done that they had to rebrand it. It didn't change, it just became something else. So they rebranded it, sold it. It was sold, that Diebold election software was sold, and the modern incarnation of it is called Dominion. And they say it's from Venezuela, it's the communists and all that. No, our government sells stuff to communism because our government is used by the global elite to facilitate the global agenda. That's why you make a virus here, you bring it over to Wuhan, you finish off the last few touches, and then you release it. And then you call it a Chinese virus. It's very convenient. And over there they say it's the United States that did it. So both sides deny their own culpability, and you have these fake enemies that the small people are supposed to divest all their interest in fighting. And the people on top that are engineering the whole thing, the whole conflict, in order to get their agenda through, are laughing at you because they've given you every reason to doubt them and yet you still believe them. You still tune into their stations, you still listen to them and act like something about what they're telling you is real. But getting back to the morning guy, here in Wisconsin, he had been going after the corporate establishment GOP, the ones that at the end of the day, at the top of the party, you'll always find them in all the top positions in the party. They always get elevated to the top positions in the party. And the one here, his name is Robin Voss. And Robin Voss, he was a college roommate of Reince Priebus, so another establishment GOP, fake conservative, full-time globalist figure. And he's the Speaker of the Wisconsin State Assembly, so one of the most powerful Republicans in the state. He's the one that gets to set the tune for the rest of the GOP to march to. You got to play ball with him. And he's also the president of the National Conference of State Legislators. So this is a guy that's no small fry in the globalist scheme of things. And the way the talk radio works is you have the local guy, then you have the regional guy, then you have your Rush and your Hannity and your Levine, and they're all, throughout the course of the day, they're all hammering the agenda in by repetition. They constantly go over and over and over and over the same talking points until the sycophant listening to them is like, yes, yes, yes. You know, he's pumping his fist. He's got the same enemies. He's got the same mindset. And these guys even make fun of their listeners. Like Rush calls his ditto heads, you know, yes men is all it really means. And so they really have a very low view of you. They use you, and they have no allegiance to you. And this is completely obvious at this point. If you've listened to any of those guys recently and how they subtly distract from the issue. Like Rush, for instance, today he was calling Biden president-elect and Harris vice president-elect, which they aren't. I mean, they're not. Legally, that is not their title, and it's still a disputed election, but he did it in such a way where he's acting like he's chagrined by them, but he's still referring to them with that title just to get you warmed up to it, just to get that seed planted where you're going to slowly accept the result and not have any more qualms about it. So these guys all have a very nefarious, high-level psychological game that they play. But the morning guy, the local guy, despite having bought into the Trump train and all that, he is a man of principle and a true Christian. I've heard him preach the gospel on his radio show. I've heard him say things that are unequivocally standing for Christ. So a guy like that is your only hope to not get bought off. Anybody that doesn't have a full allegiance to Christ is going to have a price tag. You can buy them eventually. And the regional guy, he's got a price tag. He's pretty good, but at the end of the day, he's going to play ball. If he says the wrong things, if you correct him and you hold his job over his head, he's going to play ball just to save his job. Not so much this Ben Armstrong, the local guy. And so they fired him, and the program manager comes on the radio to address it, which kudos to him for having the guts to at least say something about him. But first off, he says that they don't tolerate giving offense, and that he had been name-calling. His show had devolved into name-calling and conspiracy theory. And that was the reason why he had to be terminated. Okay? This is, it's like you listen to any of the guys, the national guys that they have on, and that's all they do is name-calling and conspiracy theory. If you really get down to it, what they're really talking about is just that it's an acceptable way of name-calling, and the targets are the acceptable ones for the Hegelian dialectic, and the conspiracy theory is the accepted conspiracy theory for the agenda. You know, if you're on the right, you have to make it look like it's all the Democrats, and if you're on the left, you have to make it look like it's all the Republicans. That's how the Hegelian dialectic works. That's how you keep the people divided, at each other's throats, always deflected away from the people at the top, the real power brokers who are playing both sides like a fiddle. And so I went on YouTube and I found one video of him, and there was a guy that made a comment, and he said, they just booted him off. Ben told too many truths. They couldn't let him continue on. Said it was sponsors. What good is sponsors if you have no listeners now? Get new sponsors. Bring Ben back. Exactly. If your sponsors are holding that over your head, I mean, what are you doing advertising on conservative talk radio if you're concerned about giving offense to some consumer base? I mean, that's really what we're supposed to believe was the reason? So neither rationale for why he was fired really holds, because, I mean, talk radio is inherently provocative, and there's going to be people taking offense to it, and the sponsors pulling their advertisement, that seems like a very weak rationale, especially since he had a very devoted fan base. He was number one in his market. And now they're going to replace him with nobody. So basically, they're willing to shoot themselves in the foot financially just to get him off the air. That's a huge red flag. Whenever you see a mammon worshiper give up money in order to silence somebody, then you know that they're just enforcing the agenda. This is what I wrote back in response to this guy. I said, absolutely, the one talk radio guy I have ever had respect for, and they got rid of him. Heard the same thing. Conley, that's the station manager, claimed that they had to let Ben go because of name-calling and conspiracy theory, but then divulged it was the sponsors. Here's the thing, though. It goes deeper than that. What I mean is, the sponsors did put pressure on the station, but they did it at the behest of the old-line Republican corporate establishment and the big agenda they're pushing through all across the globe right now. And we know what that agenda is. Notice Robin Voss and Evers, that's Governor Tony Evers, met today about COVID restrictions. That's your top Republican of the state meeting with the top Democrat. A meeting Voss called a positive step forward. They didn't divulge what was discussed, but both sides thought it was great. A positive step forward to finding common ground in developing a more unified state response to the coronavirus pandemic. That's what Voss said about the meeting. What common ground do you suppose? Think Evers is going to ease up? Yeah, right. I was listening to the station about a week ago when Morning Joe, he's the regional guy that comes on after the local guy, went off the air in mid-sentence, silenced him. Dead air for about 10 minutes, then a bunch of commercials. Then he took a call that was totally unrelated to what he had been discussing. Then the new news. After that, complete change of subject. They cut him off, reprimanded him, told him what was taboo, and if he wanted to keep his job, he just wouldn't go there. Then back to business, but to a different tune. A man with a price, unlike Ben apparently. So what was Morning Joe talking about when he was silenced? The gutless nature of Robin Voss and the establishment GOP. See, the timing is everything. Voss to meet Evers about the COVID agenda, and they get rid of the one guy really holding their feet to the flames on the same day. No doubt Conley got the ultimatum that Ben had to be gone by today. They count on people being ignorant. But if you're not, and you know how these snakes work, that's one of the names that Chris Conley cited is, we don't call people communists and snakes and vipers just because we disagree with them. That's what Conley had said about the crimes, the so-called crimes of Ben Armstrong. So I said, but if you're not ignorant and if you know how these snakes work, and all you who can be bought off of moral principle and serve mammon over God are snakes, Chris Conley. They say you are a conspiracy theorist. Meanwhile, all they do is conspire. Conspire how to manage and control the herd and enrich themselves while doing it. See, people like Ben get in the way of the real agenda. Even though Ben's misguided in my opinion about Trump, people like that will still get in the way of the real agenda and need to be silenced. And the reason for that is the great reset of the global state that this so-called pandemic is a cover for. Ben was going after the old line GOP, particularly Voss, pretty hard, and kudos to him for doing so. About time somebody spoke up for we the people. God will repay. And that was the end of my comment. And so, if Ben Armstrong somehow hears this, I just want to thank you. Thank you for standing up for Jesus Christ in a world that's growing darker by the minute. Thank you for not caving in on your principles, but standing unequivocally in the face of real and present danger and evil. May God continue to bless and provide for you and yours, and may you continue to say what needs to be said in these days. God bless you.